Well, let's take this on and speak to Jason Johnson, who's in Atlanta. He's a political analyst and a specialist in British-American relations. Jason, James Baker, they're saying that Margaret Thatcher changed the arc of history. But how will history view Margaret Thatcher, I wonder?
Well, history from the American perspective will view her in a very wonderful, romanticized way. Americans thought that Margaret Thatcher was basically the British version of Ronald Reagan. Most Americans are unaware of the level of controversy and dissent that she elicited within her own country. So on this side of the Atlantic, she will be viewed positively, but the reality is going to be missed by most people in the United States.
It was certainly an historical time, wasn't it? Especially drawing the Cold War to an end. And many things caused that to happen. But the clarity of Margaret Thatcher's beliefs was probably a vital factor, wasn't it?
It was the clarity of her beliefs, and also one of the things I research is even the way that she campaigned, actually. She borrowed a lot from Ronald Reagan. She moved British politics away from being purely about manifestos and ideology and more towards personality. Even the nicknames that she had, from, Margaret Thatcher, the Milk Snatcher, to the Iron Lady, these are all nicknames that help define her as the most dominant personality in British politics, and that's what allowed her to get policies through. That will never be forgotten.
Right. And what was interesting back in the UK domestically was that the new Labourites of the 1990s had to adopt the kind of central tenets of Thatcherism, if you like, to rescue the Labour Party. And then we saw what happened then and how long they lasted.
Oh, yes. Tony Blair pretty much tried to grab the mantle of being, someone who could adopt Thatcherite perspectives and what he called sort of third way politics and meld old Labour socialist tendencies with the sort of neocon principles of Margaret Thatcher. That worked for Tony Blair. It certainly hasn't worked for Gordon Brown and some of his successors. And again, that's going to be the sort of conflicted legacy of Margaret Thatcher. In some respects, the economy in England was doing terrible when she came into office, and she did elicit some improvements. But the way that she affected public services, the way she affected the NHS, the way she affected public transportation and miners, these are changes to the British fabric of society that will never be repaired.
And when James Baker talks about Margaret Thatcher changing the arc of history, does he mean there that the domestic policies that she brought in were taken up by other leaders around the world?
Partially. I actually think Margaret Thatcher was much more radical to British politics than Ronald Reagan was to American politics. I mean, Reagan was a neoconservative, but there were precedents for some of the things he was doing. Thatcher, by selling certain parts of National Health Service, Thatcher, by taking British transportation and selling it to private interests, that was something that no one in England had ever even thought about in the previous 15 to 20 years. So she changed the arc of history domestically, but internationally, she provided the partner that the United States desperately needed in Europe to fight communism. And so that will be something that she has always praised for, certainly on the right, and even with Ronald Reagan and with even Barack Obama in the United States today.
Jason Johnson, good to get the US here. Appreciate that. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.